Alexander Shkudun. The Amulet.
Take the amulet, son. It will bring you good luck.
30 years have passed since my father said these words to me and fastened the small, round medallion around my neck. 30 years, and it felt like no more than the beating of a heart, separating me from that moment by an invisible barrier that I have since crossed. They say it has magical powers, my father told me, gently stroking the shiny little disc with a small stone shimmering in its center. A meteorite fell to Earth 25 years ago, and this stone is a fragment of it. The Mayan Indians found it and fashioned this wondrous amulet by casting a spell known only to them. My father looked at the artifact with a sad gaze as if he didn't want to part with it. He ruffled my hair, briefly touched the rough surface of the amulet, sat beside me for a few minutes, and watched his 13-year-old son examine it with curiosity. Before he left, he said,
It needs you now more than it needs me.
From that day, the amulet was always with me. It was more than just jewelry. It seemed to radiate an invisible force that sent a pleasant shiver through my body. I always trusted my parents, and so I truly believed that it had magical properties. Why would my father lie to me? Parents always want the best for their children. I never showed it to anyone, kept it hidden under my t-shirt or in the inside pockets of loose clothes. I never talked about it with my friends and avoided topics related to talismans or similar things altogether. I excelled at school, played sports, and from time to time I would ask the amulet for a little bit of luck. Carefully, when no one was watching, I would touch it, feel its warmth in return, and ask. During exams on the football pitch, when meeting girls, especially to avoid embarrassment in front of them, or when buying a lottery ticket, hoping to trick the stubborn reality. The medallion didn't always work, but more often than not it saved me. For example, once I managed to ask the most beautiful girl in school, at least in my opinion, out on a date. I would never have had the courage to approach her without the amulet. It whispered to me and touched my chest. Don't worry, you'll succeed, I'm with you. There won't be a refusal. Like in a trance, my legs trembling, I approached the girl and hoarsely asked if she was free that evening. I was shaking like a leaf, but the amulet kept whispering, soothing me. Don't be shy, chin up, you've got nothing to lose. And she said yes. To me, this felt like a miracle, a golden rain falling from the sky. After that, the amulet became my guide. It helped me make the right choices, supported me like no one else, offered advice, and led me on the right path. I now understood how my father had managed to achieve so much in life. He had the amulet. He wore it constantly. By the age of 25, he had opened his own company selling light metals, which brought us a steady income year after year. By 30, he passed on the company to my mother and climbed higher in his career, becoming a member of parliament. When my father turned 32, my mother gave him a son. Without hesitation, he named me Bogan. Every year we went on vacations to Europe, never sparing any expenses because, as my father always said,
How you rest is how you'll work afterward.
our family thrived. There were no quarrels or disagreements, at least I never saw either of my parents argue. And then, by the time he was 45, my father seemingly gave me the most precious thing he had aside from me and my mother, the amulet. I thought a lot about this gift and its remarkable properties. It was so fascinating and simply incredible. Once I asked my father where he got it from, and he told me it was a gift from my mother. She smiled and added that it had once belonged to her grandmother, but after that the trail went cold. My grandmother, unfortunately, was no longer alive. Soon I stopped trying to trace the origins of this unique object. After sifting through countless occult, esoteric, and scientific works by scholars known to the world, I found no mention of an amulet made of silvery metal with a greenish, slightly convex stone in the center. I didn't want to show it to archaeologists or other experts on ancient artifacts. Perhaps I feared they would take it away for research or lock it under a glass dome to be displayed in a museum for everyone to see. It was mine, a gift from my father, and as every child loves to repeat, gifts are not to be given back. After finishing high school, I had no trouble enrolling in university to study law. I wanted to create, to make a difference, and to learn. I believed in the amulet, believed that a bright future awaited me. I looked at the world with the optimistic eyes of a freshly minted student. Perhaps it was because the amulet was always with me, preventing me from slipping into depression or responding pessimistically to life's events. By then I had been seriously seeing Katya, that same girl from school. I was incredibly pleased that she had found something in me that she liked. Though, if you ask me, I had no idea what it was. I was just an ordinary guy. Fair-haired, not very tall, with a chiseled face and brown eyes. I wasn't particularly gifted physically, and compared to the other guys, I wasn't considered handsome. But something in me caught her attention. Perhaps the amulet, maybe it was because of it that she felt the way she did about me. I didn't know the answer. I could only guess. I graduated from university with honors. It wasn't too difficult, really. Once again, the image of the medallion on the thin chain hanging around my neck appeared before my eyes. Perhaps that's why. During exams, I would always get the cards to which I knew the answers perfectly. In competitions, I would inevitably win because my opponents seemed sleepy, distracted, and strangely unaware. After every success, I would thank the amulet and pet it like a beloved pet. There was definitely something mystical about it, wasn't there? Sometimes when I awoke from a nightmare, in the middle of the night, I would notice a faint glow emanating from it. Or was that just my imagination? I would take the amulet off at night and put it on the bedside table next to me. In the morning, I would put it back on, tucking it under my shirt so that no one could see it. I must admit, I was lucky. It seemed as though fortune had included me in her list of favorites, showering me with new surprises every day. On my 25th birthday, when I walked into the Volvo showroom to buy wiper blades for my father's car, I became the company's 1 millionth customer and received a brand new Volvo S70 as a gift. Katya, who had been my wife for 2 years, gave me another gift a year later. She had twins, a boy and a girl, 2 minutes apart. The whole world lay at my feet. The company that my mother had left to Katya and me was growing. More and more customers were interested in metal and in buying it from us. Eventually, we had to open 8 more branches abroad and expand our product range. Over 500 people worked for me, all highly qualified specialists who left no doubt about their abilities. I was lucky with them too. Problems with the workforce were rare, and when they did arise, I could always find profitable compromises. Yes, of course, there were minor setbacks and bad luck, but I understood that the wonderful medallion wasn't all powerful. It couldn't give me everything. Our company was robbed 3 times. Twice we were offered protection, and after I refused, they threatened violence. But these were mere trifles, as the criminals were almost always found immediately, and through court we got back everything they had stolen, plus interest for the moral damage and lost profits. The racketeers also quieted down. Apparently, my father, who had retired by then, still maintained connections with government officials. Our daughter and son were growing up, Katya, named after my beloved wife, and Sasha, named after our mutual best friend. The little ones were not just a joy, they were rays of sunshine, stars above our lives. When my wife was pregnant, I prayed day and night for the amulet to grant health to our future children. I asked for their happiness and for them not to anger the fickle hand of fate. Whether my prayers were heard, I'll never know, but the children were born healthy. That was perhaps the happiest moment of my life, my wife walking out of the delivery room, holding 2 tiny babies wrapped in blankets. They were hardly visible under the mound of fabric tied with 2 brightly colored ribbons like a gift. And indeed it was a gift. A gift from above. The best gift one could ever dream of. How long ago it was. I sit beside my now elderly parents. We're having tea, reminiscing about the old days. Katya has taken the kids to visit a friend, saying something about going to a meeting. Apparently, they just rebroadcasted Brigada on TV, and I'm supposed to pick them up in 5 hours. I glance at the golden Rolex bracelet on my wrist. There's still time. I slice the cake my mother baked and serve everyone a piece. I can't stand store-bought cakes, but my parents always have homemade ones. Since retiring, Mom's baking has become so exceptional that even the top chefs of France would be envious. Despite their age, my parents look remarkably young for their years. Dad is fit and broad-shouldered. Mom is pleasantly plump, with a rosy glow on her cheeks. Together, they look beautiful. I'm sure the amulet played no small part in that. I study the plasterwork on the ceiling. I don't recall it being there before, the various trinkets hanging on the walls, the wooden cutlery as large as a hand. They must have interesting guests. The walls are all decorated in soft light shades. The house has 3 rooms downstairs and 3 upstairs, connected by a spiral staircase that winds up like ivy. The layout is so convenient. 2 balconies overlook a small lake, partially concealed by towering poplars. What more could one want in their old age? I bought them this house not long ago, just a few kilometers from the city in a beautiful and picturesque forested area. It has a small plot of land where Mom grows flowers. They seem to enjoy it here. At least Mom was happy to leave their apartment, even though it was in a prestigious part of town. She'd grown tired of the hustle and bustle, the frantic pace of life. She wanted peace and quiet. I thought Dad felt the same way. For their anniversary, Katya and I threw them a housewarming party. It was a lovely surprise. Both parents were overjoyed, and when Dad was moving in, he whispered in my ear, "Well, now this is just perfect. At least here we won't have neighbors banging on the pipes at night."
Son, pour me some more tea.
Dad asks, and I happily comply. "Mom, what about you?" I ask. Mom smiles and shakes her head. "My parents have given me everything, and then some love, care, affection, joy, and the amulet." I touch my chest, hoping to feel the familiar tingling of the medallion. Sadly, it's no longer there. It seems Dad understands, nodding thoughtfully with a smile. Perhaps he, too, once tried to feel the cool metal beneath his shirt after he gave it to me. I wonder how many days passed before this reflexive gesture faded from memory. Now I understand what he must have felt when he lost the support of the magical object. I pour tea which smells of St. John's wort and chamomile. And for a brief moment I drift back into my memories. When Sasha turned 13, I knew for certain that I would pass the amulet to him, as the elder son, for a whole minute. Just like I had once sat before my father, he now sat before me. So much time had passed, but I knew that the passing of the amulet from father to son would become a kind of tradition. I told him the story of the meteorite, of the Mayan Indians, embellishing it a little from what I had heard from Dad. Sasha listened to me, his mouth agape in surprise, and I understood him well because, in my time, I had also been deeply intrigued by this story.
Dad, this amulet, it's the only one like it in the whole world, right?
Sasha asked, staring at the greenish stone. I shrugged. I don't know. Maybe. Indeed, I had never considered whether anyone else had such an amulet. It was possible that the Mayans had found more than one fragment, and so it was quite possible that there were other magical artifacts, bringing luck to their owners. Sasha carefully put the amulet around his neck and went to the mirror. He spun around, examining the medallion.
Will it really bring me luck?
The note of innocence in his voice made me smile. "It brought me luck," I said, patting him on the shoulder, and he hugged me.
Thanks, Dad. You're the best in the world.
I left his room in great spirits. On the threshold, I paused and, as if concluding the ritual of passing on the amulet, I said, "It's now more needed by you than by me." I quietly closed the door behind me. Instinctively, I ran my hand over my neck, searching for the thin chain. I sighed. It was all right. It was time to get used to it. Dad finished his second cup of tea. Mom was gathering plates from the table and putting them in the sink. "The amulet really was magical," I said. I knew how silly those words sounded coming from a 43-year-old man, but still, I said them, thoughtfully reflecting on the events of the past years. Dad put his cup down on the table and gave me a long, thoughtful look.
How are Sasha and Katya doing?
He asked. "They're doing well," I smiled. "Both are excellent students."
Who would doubt it?
Dad said, beaming with a knowing smile and winking.
You know, son, I've asked myself many times if I would have achieved everything I have today without the amulet.
Dad shook his head and spread his arms.
The answer is obvious no. I wouldn't even have been able to open the company, let alone everything else.
He chuckled and took another sip of tea. We sat together for a little while longer, discussing plans for the future before I stayed behind to help Mom with the dishes while Dad went upstairs for his afternoon nap. As I washed the dishes, I asked, "Mom, did Grandma never tell you anything about the amulet when she gave it to you? Where did she get it from?" Mom was wiping down the table. She looked up at me, and I noticed the affectionate smile on her lips. I had always loved that smile. It had just the right touch of mischief and tenderness. Only she could smile like that. "Dad was right," I continued. "Without the amulet, life would have been much harder. It's thanks to it that everything worked out for me. It allowed me to fully realize myself." Mom walked over and placed her hands over mine.
"Silly,"
she said gently.
"that amulet was just a little piece of glass I bought from a traveling merchant who passed through our town. I gave it to your father for his birthday."
I blinked in surprise, my mouth falling open like a child.
"Everything you've achieved in this life has been the result of your own efforts, hard work, and determination. Sometimes people just need a little confidence in themselves to make their dreams come true."
Mom stroked my hand.
And that's what the amulet really was for you. By believing in its magic, you were believing in yourself.
She looked out the window at the beautiful garden she had created. The roses were blooming, the chrysanthemums in all their colors, the tulips, they were all stunning. The trees behind them, as if after a long slumber, stretched their branches like wings, rustling in the breeze, eager to lift off from the earth and soar into the amber-hued sky. And I stood beside her and smiled, the smile of someone who had just been given the most precious gift in life. Women are so much wiser than men, no matter how much I try to convince myself otherwise, and no matter how many counter-arguments I hear, it's just true. And believe me, it's a wonderful thing. Kiev, the 4th April 2005.